Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I'm going to be ranking financial advice for someone in their 20s. Because I'm in my 20s, I feel like I have a decent idea of what is good and what is bad advice. As always, if you like what you see, consider subscribing and turning on post notifications. First on our list is pay yourself first. Now, if there's one S tier rule that separates people who stay broke from people who actually build wealth, it's paying yourself first. Most of us do the exact opposite. The paycheck hits on Friday. We pay the landlord, the interest provider, the local bar, and Chipotle, and then we hope there's something left over at the end of the month to save. Spoiler alert, there never is. Life is really good at finding ways to spend exactly what is in your checking account. Paying yourself first means you treat your future self like the most important bill you owe. Before a single dime goes to anyone else, you move a set amount, even if it's just $50, straight into an investment or savings account. The trick is to automate it. If you have to manually move the money every month, you're eventually going to have a bad week. Convince yourself you need that money for something else. When it happens automatically, your brain just adapts to the smaller number left in your main account. It's like magic. You stop missing the money because you never really had it to begin with. In your 20s, this is your greatest superpower because of compounding. $100 paid to yourself today is worth infinitely more than $500 paid to yourself when you're 40. It's the difference between retiring on your own terms or working until you're 75. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it's the bedrock of every single success story you see. Next on our list is the quote boring index fund. The boring index fund is the ultimate S tier move because it's basically a cheat code for the stock market. While everyone else is on TikTok trying to find the next moonshot crypto or AI stock, you're just buying the entire ocean instead of trying to find the right fish. Think of an index fund like VU for the S&P 500 or VTI for the total stock market as a giant basket that holds small pieces of hundreds of thousands of companies. When you buy one share, you're instantly diversified. If one company in the basket fails, there are 499 others to carry the weight. It's boring because you don't have to watch the news or read earnings reports. You just buy it, go live your life, and let the American economy do the work for you. The human truth that most financial gurus don't tell you is that nearly 90% of professional fund managers, or the people who do this for 50, 60, 70 hours a week, cannot beat a boring index fund over a 15-year period. If the pros can't beat it, why would you? A 20-something with a life to live. By choosing the index, you're statistically likely to outperform almost everyone who's trying to be clever. In your 20s, the boring path is actually the most aggressive one because of fees. Active funds might charge you 1% or more to manage your money. Index funds like VOO or VTI charge as little as 0.03%. Over 30 years, that tiny difference in fees can literally mean hundreds of thousands of dollars extra in your pocket instead of brokers. Next is the side hustle. In your 20s, the side hustle is often sold as the ultimate S tier ambition move. It's painted as the path to quitting your job and becoming your own boss. But in 2026, the data shows that for many, it has morphed into a second job with none of the benefits and all of the exhaustion. The burnout reality, which is the case for the F tier, is the side of hustling that often robs you of the most valuable non monetary asset downtime. According to 2026 surveys, a staggering 67% of side hustlers report feeling burned out, with Gen Z being the hardest hit at 73%. When you turn your hobby into a hustle, you lose your escape. If you love photography, but start doing 3 weddings a weekend on top of your 9 to 5, photography stops being a passion and starts being a chore. You end up with no time to actually relax, which can ruin your performance at your main job, the one that actually pays your rent. Now, low skill gigs like ride sharing or delivery are even worse. They have the highest burnout rates at 74%. You're essentially trading your car's depreciation and your mental health for a few extra bucks an hour. However, there is a side to this side hustle world that could be a tier or S tier move, and that's career insurance. In a world of mass layoffs and stagnant wages, having a second income stream, even a small one, provides a massive psychological safety net. A side hustle is a safe space to learn things that your day job won't teach you. If you're a teacher, but you start a small e-commerce store, you're learning marketing, supply chain, and customer service, skills that make you much more employable if you ever want to switch careers. If your side hustle earns you an extra $500 a month and you dump it all into that boring index fund we talked about, or use it to pay off high interest debt, you are drastically shortening your timeline to financial freedom. The smartest move in 2026 is to pick a skill based side hustle rather than a gig one. A gig hustle would be an example of driving Uber, delivery, or data entry. Low pay, high wear and tear on your body and assets. An example of S tier would be a skill hustle, freelance writing, medical coding, or mobile car washing. These allow you to set higher rates and build a brand that can eventually grow into a full time business. All in all, if you're doing it to survive or if it's making you hate your life, it's D tier. If it's building a new skill or a safety net without killing your sleep, then it is an A tier move. Next, we have financing a car. Financing a car is one of the most common ways 20 something year olds accidentally sabotage their future. In 2026, the average new car price has hit a staggering $50,000 with interest rates for new loans hovering around 6.5 to 7%. When you finance a car, you are doing something mathematically insane. You are paying interest on a liability, something that loses value. The math behind the double loss, think of it as a race where you're running backwards while the wind blows against you. Depreciation and interest. The moment you drive the car off the lot, it loses at least 10% up to 20% of its value. By the end of the year, by end of year 5, the average car is worth just 45% of what you paid for it. Then there's interest. While the car is plummeting in value, you are paying the bank for the privilege, if you want to call it that, of owning it. On average, a $50,000 car with 6.8% interest rate, you'll pay roughly $11,500 in interest alone over the life of the loan. You're pretty much paying 20% more for something that will be worth 50% less in 5 years. The opportunity cost, the $800,000 garage. The human way to look at this is by asking, what else could that money have done? If you took that average monthly car payment of around $800 and invested it into a boring index fund, earning 8% for just those 5 years, then let it sit until you retire at 65, that money would grow to roughly $800,000. Every time you sign a car loan, you aren't just buying a vehicle, you are potentially trading away $1 million or near $1 million retirement for a car that smells like new for exactly 3 months. The smartest move is to let someone else take the depreciation hit. Buying a 3-year-old car means you get the vehicle that still has modern safety features and tech, but you pay 30 to 40% less than the original owner did. If you pay cash, or at least put down a massive down payment to keep the loan short, like 3 years or less, you avoid the trap of being what you hear sometimes upside down, where you owe more than the car is worth. Next is budgeting every dollar. Budgeting every dollar, often called zero based budgeting, is a classic financial debate. For some, it's the only way to stay afloat. For others, it's a direct path to a mental breakdown. Depending on your personality, this also can be S tier or F tier, like some others we've gone over. The core idea is simple: income minus expenses equals $0. You aren't literally trying to have $0 in your bank account, you're just making sure every single dollar has a job to do. Whether that job is paying rent, buying groceries, or going into your boring index fund. This job for every dollar idea stops that weird feeling at the end of the month where you wonder where $400 went. By tracking everything, you surface phantom expenses like forgotten subscriptions or that $15 a day lunch habit. This is the human hack. If you budget $200 for fun or splurging money and assign it to a job, you can spend it all without feeling like you're stealing from your future. Next is the case for D tier, the pain of precision. The reality is that tracking every cent is exhausting. In 2026, research into the psychological impact of money shows that stringent budgeting significantly increases decision fatigue and stress levels. For many 20 something year olds, life is too variable for a rigid budget. If you spend $52 on a $50 grocery budget, your brain sees that as a failure. This often leads to the what the hell effect, where you feel like you've already failed and the month is spiraling into just overspending. So, is spending 1, 2, or 5 hours a month, depending on how serious you take it, tracking $2 transactions worth it? For some, that mental energy is better spent on career alpha that we already went over, learning a new skill that could earn you an extra $1,000 a month or a side hustle. If tracking every latte feels like a chore, many are moving towards the pay yourself first method. Step one, automate your S tier goals, 401, savings, the second the check hits. Step two, pay your big three, housing, car, and food. Step three, spend the rest however you want. This gives you the same financial result as meticulous budgeting. Your savings goals are met without the daily stress of logging a candy bar. Next, we got travel while you're young, even if it's on credit. Travel while you're young, even if it's on credit, is insane advice and obviously the D tier advice. It sounds romantic and adventurous, like a coming of age movie. But in the real world economy of 2026, it's a recipe for a decade of financial regret. When you put a vacation on a credit card and don't pay it off immediately, you aren't just paying for the trip. You're paying a 20% to 25%, sometimes even more than that, of a happiness tax to the bank. Let's say you take a $4,000 trip to Europe on credit. If you only pay the minimum each month, that trip doesn't cost $4,000. It ends up costing you over $7,000 and takes nearly a decade to pay off. By the time you finally paid for that 1 week in Paris, the memory is 10 years old, but the debt has been actively preventing you from buying a house or starting a business the entire time. The truth is that it's hard to actually enjoy a sunset in Greece when there's a voice in the back of your head calculating how many months of work it will take to pay for the cocktail in your hand. Science shows that a huge part of the joy of travel comes from the anticipation. When you save up cash, the trip is a reward. When you use credit, the trip is a loan you have to spend the next 2 years or more working off. And then there's the vacation hangover. Coming home from a trip is already hard. Coming home to a $4,000 bill that is gathering 25% interest makes the post vacation blues feel like a financial crisis. Next on the list is move back in with your parents, and I'm going to combine it with living with them longer than you think. Moving back in with your parents is often joked about as a failure to launch, but in the 2026 economy, it's actually the ultimate financial power play. While your peers are throwing away 30 to 50% of their income on rent, utilities, and grocery bills that keep getting hit by inflation, you're essentially running a wealth building experiment in a controlled environment. When you live at home, you aren't just saving on rent, you're eliminating the big three leaks in your bucket: rent, utilities, and groceries. In 2026, the median rent in many US metros is over $2,000. That's $24,000 a year. Utilities, between electricity, water, and high speed internet, you're saving another $200 to $400 a month. Groceries, if you're pooling resources with your parents, your food bill can drop from a few $100s a month to almost nothing. Totaled up, living at home can easily gift you an extra 25, 30, $35,000 a year in pure disposable income. The mistake most people make is moving out the second they have $5,000 in the bank or whatever it may be. The right move is to stay for 2 to 4 years if your relationship with your parents allows it. Year one, you should focus on killing your high interest debt, whether it's student loans, car loans, whatever kind of debt you have. Year two, build a bulletproof emergency fund of $20,000 or more, whatever you think your 6 month living expense bill is. Year three and four is aggressively dump that rent money into your boring index funds. If you save $2,500 a month from your rent or your food or the high interest debt that we just talked about that you tackled for just 3 years and invest it, you'll have $100,000 by age 25 or 26. Because of compounding, that $100,000, even if you never add another cent, could grow to over $2 million by retirement. You basically won the game before you even moved out. Is this a hit to your social life? Maybe. Does it feel like a bit awkward to bring a date back to your childhood bedroom? Definitely. But you have to weigh that social tax against the freedom of never being a paycheck away from homelessness for the rest of your life. In 2026, the coolest thing you can have in your 20s isn't a luxury apartment, it's a 6 figure net worth and zero debt. Next on our list is invest in Career Alpha. Investing in Career Alpha is the ultimate S tier move because it's the only investment that increases the size of the pie, if you will, rather than just how you slice it. If you have $1,000 to invest, putting it in the stock market might earn you $100 or $200 in a year, but spending that $1,000 on a certification, a specialized boot camp, or even a professional coach could bump your salary by $5, $10, $20,000 a year, a 1,000% plus return that compounds every year for the rest of your life. In our parents' generation, you stayed at one company and hoped for a 3% raise every year. In 2026, that loyalty is often a tax on your wealth. The data shows that job hoppers in their 20s see their salaries increase by as much as 35% over 3 years. Nearly double that of people who stay in the same role. This is Career Alpha, the extra return you get by actively managing your career like a portfolio. So the 3 ways I see doing it in 2026 is first, scale up or ship out. With AI and tech merging into almost every field, you need to be systems fluent. Professionals who can navigate AI tools and data platforms are commanding premium salaries right now. Next is the certification shortcut. While a degree is a lifelong credential, a $500 to $1,000 professional certification can often be the checkbox that gets you past an HR filter for a job that pays $20,000 more. Next is build a proof of work. In the 2026 job market, showing what you can do, like a portfolio, a GitHub, or a blog, is often more valuable than just listing where you went to school. Think of yourself as a business. If you aren't investing in R&D or like research and development for your brain, you're going to get disrupted by someone else who is. Warren Buffett famously said that your own earning power is the only asset that can't be inflated away. No matter what happens to the dollar, your skills stay with you. Next up is the abuse the 401k match. And I'm going to be blunt. If you aren't taking this, you're effectively turning down a raise that your boss already approved. Think of it as a buy one, get one free deal for your future. If your company says they'll match 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary, they are literally offering you a guaranteed 50% return on your money immediately. You won't find that kind of sure thing in the stock market or anywhere else. The reason this is a total S tier in your 20s is that free money gets decades to snowball. Let's say you're 25 and you put in $3,000 to get a $3,000 match from your company. That 6,000 total, growing at standard market rate, could turn into roughly $100,000 by the time you retire. If you didn't take the match, you'd only have half that. You basically just bought $50,000 for free simply by clicking the button in your HR portal. And this is assuming you quit contributing after that $3,000. Now, the only real trap, if you will, to watch out for is vesting. Some companies have a rule where you have to stay for 2 or 3 years before that match money is officially yours to keep. But even if you think you might leave sooner, you should still do it. Your own contributions are always yours, and there's always a chance you end up staying longer than you planned. Leaving a match on the table is the financial equivalent of leaving a stack of $100 bills on the sidewalk because you didn't feel like bending over to pick them up. Next on our list is the 3 to 6 month emergency fund. 3 to 6 month emergency fund is the sleep better at night fund, and in 2026, it's basically your financial armor. Think of it as a buffer between you and the chaos of the world. Without it, one flat tire or a surprise medical bill doesn't just ruin your week, it can kickstart a debt spiral that takes you years to escape. Now, why do we do 3 to 6 months? The 3 month version is if you're single, renting, and have a rock solid job where you can find a new gig in a week. The 6 month version is the goal if you have a house, kids, or a specialized career where hiring cycles take a long time. In the current 2026 economy, with inflation still a factor, some people are even pushing for 9 or 12 months just to be bulletproof. The coolest part that people forget is that it's not just for disasters. It's also an I quit fund if your boss turns into a nightmare or a dream job opens up in a different city. Having $15,000 in the bank gives you the power to say yes to a new life without checking your bank balance first. It's the ultimate form of leverage in your 20s. Do not put this in the stock market though. If the economy crashes and you lose your job, that's exactly when the stock market could be down 30% and you'll be forced to sell at a loss. Keep it in a high yield savings account. In 2026, you can still find accounts paying around 3 to 3.5% interest. On top of that, it stays liquid. You can get it in 1 to 2 days. It's FDIC insured and it's actually working for you while it sits there. Next is you're too young to worry about retirement. This is perhaps the most expensive lie you will ever hear in your 20s and probably your 30s too. It feels like retirement is 100 years away, so you figure you'll just wait until you're making real money at 30 or 40 to start. The problem is that compounding interest is a game of time more than it is money. When you wait to start, you aren't just losing the money you didn't save, you are losing the doubling periods at the end of your life when your pile of money is at its biggest. Let's look at what happens if you invest $500 a month at an 8% return, starting at different ages. If you start at age 22, by age 65, you'll have $258,000 invested, and the final balance will be over $2.2 million. If you wait 3 short years, so 25 years old, you'll invest $240,000 and your final balance will be 1.7 million. That is a $500,000 difference just for 3 years of your time. Now let's do 27. So you waited 5 years later than the 22-year-old. You invested $228,000 and your final balance is 1.49 million. So almost $800,000 less than the 22-year-old. Then is 32 years old, 10 years later. Total invested is $198,000 and the final balance isn't even $1 million. It's 970,000. This is a $1.28 million difference than the 22-year-old. By waiting just 3 years, you only saved yourself from contributing $18,000, but that 3 year delay costs you nearly $500,000 by the time you retire. Now, why this happens is the snowball effect. Money invested in your early 20s is like a snowball starting at the very top of a mountain. It has the longest path to roll, but every dollar you invest at 22 has 43 years to double and redouble. A dollar invested at 32 only has 33 years. That 10-year gap isn't just a 10-year difference in savings, it's losing the most explosive growth years at the end of every cycle. You don't need to be rich you don't need to be rich to start. You just need to be early. Investing $50 a month right now is arguably better than investing $500 a month 10 years from now. Don't let your future self pay $1 million tax because your current self wanted a slightly nicer car or a few more nights out. Next on the list is buy a house, buy a house ASAP, anything to do with buying a house in your 20s. So, in your 20s, buying a house is often framed as the ultimate adult achievement, but in 2026, the math has become a bit of a mess. For our parents, a house was a cheap place to live that happened to go up in value. For us, with a mortgage rates hovering around 6% and home prices still high, a house can easily become a luxury liability if you aren't careful. The human truth is that a house is the minimum you will pay every month, while rent is the maximum. While you're 24, your life is a series of maybes. Maybe you'll get a job in another state. Maybe you'll meet someone you'll want to move in together. If you buy a house and need to sell it in less than 3 to 5 years, you will likely lose money once you factor in the 5 or 6% agent commissions and closing costs. You're essentially trading your most valuable asset in your 20s, mobility, for a pile of bricks and a lawn you have to mow. The 15 versus 30 reality check. The right way, in my opinion, to think about a house is that it's less of an investment and more of a forced savings account with a massive lock on the door. How much you actually save depends entirely on the term of the loan. In my opinion, if you can only afford the house using a 30-year mortgage rather than a 15, you can't afford the house. You aren't buying a home, you're signing up to be a long-term interest payer machine for the bank. Let's look at a $400,000 home with a 20% down payment using typical 2026 rates. On a 30-year mortgage at 6.16%, your total interest paid is $382,000, with the total being $782,000 versus a 15-year mortgage with a slightly lower interest rate. You're getting a slightly higher monthly payment, but your total interest paid is $149,000. By choosing the 30-year, you are volunteering to pay an extra $230,000 in interest just for the privilege of a lower monthly payment. On the 15-year, you're essentially buying $250,000 back for the price of an extra $658 a month. Next is rent is throwing away money. The phrase rent is throwing away money is perhaps the most dangerous financial cliche in 2026. It's a favorite of boomer parents who bought houses for a pack of gum and $10 in the 60s, but today it's often F tier advice that can trap you in a financial nightmare. Think of rent not as thrown away money, but as a subscription fee for shelter. You don't say you're throwing away money on a Netflix subscription just because you don't own the movies. Rent buys you three massive assets that homeowners don't have: mobility, liquidity, and a price ceiling. In your 20s, the ability to pack up and move for a better job in another city is your biggest wealth building tool. A house is an anchor that makes moving expensive and slow. Liquidity. Your money isn't locked in the walls. You can't put that down payment into the boring index fund where it's actually growing and accessible. 3 is a price ceiling. Rent is the most you will pay for housing each month. A mortgage is the least. If the water heater explodes, the landlord pays. If the roof leaks, the landlord pays. As a renter, your housing bill is fixed. Now is the unrecoverable costs of owning. Homeowners throw away massive amounts of money every single month. They just call it different things like property taxes, maintenance, insurance, mortgage interest. On a 30-year loan at 2026 rates, mortgage interest totals up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Next on our list is don't use credit cards. Deciding whether to use a credit card in your 20s is like being handed a Ferrari. It's the fastest way to get where you're going, but if you don't know how to drive, you're going to end up in a ditch. The advice, never use credit cards, is S tier advice for some and F tier advice for others. It all comes down to your brain chemistry and your spending habits. The reality is that our brains are literally wired to spend more when we use plastic. Famous studies, like one from MIT, show that paying with cash activates the insular cortex, the same part of the brain that processes physical pain. In this case, cash equals pain. You physically feel the money leaving your hand, and it creates a natural brake on your spending. Credit equals anesthesia. Swiping or tapping a card anesthetizes that pain. In fact, research shows that people are willing to pay up to 100% more for the exact same item when using a credit card versus cash. Next is the rewards trap, or quote, rewards. Credit card companies are master psychologists. They offer you 1% to 5% cash back, which sounds like a win, but for many people, this triggers a sale mentality in the brain. You think, oh, I'm getting 2% back, so this $100 shirt's basically $98. That tiny mental discount often gives people the green light to buy things they wouldn't have considered if they had to count out $100 bills. If the rewards entice you to spend even 3% more than you planned, you've already lost the game. Credit cards create payment decoupling also. They separate the joy of the purchase from the pain of the bill in 30 days. This delay makes the expense feel less real at the moment of purchase. By the time the bill arrives, the dopamine from the new shoe is gone, but the debt is very, very real. The only reason why don't use credit cards is sometimes bad advice is because it can be a mortgage gatekeeper. In 2026, if you want that 15-year mortgage we talked about, you need a high credit score. If you never use a credit card, you might have a thin credit file, which means higher interest rates or possibly getting rejected for a home loan entirely. So, my verdict is if you're an impulse spender, stay away. Never get a credit card. If you can treat a credit card exactly like a debit card and pay it off daily or weekly or just on time to keep that pain fresh, if you will, this could be an A-tier tool for building wealth in your future. All right, guys, that's all for today. If you like what you saw, please consider subscribing. And like always, let me know in the comments what you thought and if you got any ideas for future videos. All right, see you in the next one.